It is my pleasure to welcome you to the second part of the crash course Marketing Market-Oriented Business Management. We are in the first section of the second part being strategic marketing, and the first section is segmenting and targeting markets. Some of you might wonder why I did not separate market segmenting from strategic marketing. Segmenting, normally understood as gathering the information of a market and then based on this information making strategic marketing decisions. This is what you find in a lot of textbooks. However, I have a bit of a different perspective because segmenting and therewith targeting has a massive impact on your strategic marketing decisions. This is what I will hopefully show in a moment. Furthermore, I will try to show you the process of market segmenting and then targeting, which I think is ideal. Within this process, I will also show you a few other approaches and variables you can use for market segmenting. But now let's clear up a few basic terminology things. Segmenting is simply gathering information, of course analyzing this, about a market and then clustering the market into several market segments. You can call these market segments submarkets. Targeting is deciding which markets or which submarkets, which market segments will we attack. We're choosing our target group. Positioning, finally, is then communicating and delivering brand value to this target group, to the selected market segments. And of course your positioning must be designed to the needs and wants of your target group. I've said that segmenting and targeting will have a massive impact on your market cultivation, on your strategic marketing decisions. And this is what I would like to make clear through this chart. You have the market coverage. So theoretically, a brand can cover the whole market, meaning every member of, or every inhabitant of a country, every citizen of a country is in the target group. I could not come up with an example because I cannot find a brand that is targeting everyone. But where I can come up with an example is segment marketing, meaning choosing a segment. Not the whole country or the whole population, but a part of this population, a relatively large market segment. To clarify this, I would like to use the automotive industry. So you have the low entry or low budget cars, then you have the sector in the middle, and you have your premium cars. And even within this classification, you have different target groups. An example might be BMW and Mercedes-Benz. Both cars or both car brands in the premium sector. So one could think, yes, they have the same target group. Possibly not quite. At least in parts, their target groups differ. Look at the slogans. BMW slogan is sheer driving pleasure. This means BMW is appealing rather to the sportive, dynamic types. Whilst Mercedes-Benz, with its slogan, the best or nothing, is rather appealing to the car owners that want to feel distinguished from the rest, a bit of comfort and such things. So what I want to come to is, even in one large segment, which probably quite a few people would think they have the same target group, not quite. Also there, you have to differentiate and go into detail to see what is your specific target group. Anyway, for both brands, and also other car brands, it is a rather large market. So segment marketing, or choosing a segment, normally, not exclusively, leads to mass marketing. Examples are a commercial on the telly, an ad in a magazine. That all makes sense to reach a broad audience. If your market segment is very small, you would call it a niche. Examples are the super high-end sports cars, like Lamborghini, Ferrari, Wiesmann, and such cars. Here it doesn't make sense to have a commercial running on the telly. Your investment would not be very efficient, as the target group is very small and these are cars, they're not made for everyone. So you would rather go for dialogue marketing, inviting your customers and potential customers to events. Approach them directly, individually. That is rather your marketing approach there. Finally, you can choose individual marketing, often called segment of one approach. Then, theoretically, in the B2C sector, consumer markets, it would be one person as one target group. More often, you find this within the realm of B2B marketing. Again, with the automotive industry, a supplier of car brands or car manufacturers would most definitely or most likely cultivate and work with the car brands, the car manufacturers individually. So they have their Mercedes-Benz team, their Toyota team, their VW team, the Renault team, the Chrysler team, whoever they're targeting. You don't have many car manufacturers and car brands in the world, and your business depends on just a few players on the demand side. So an individual segment of one approach. And that is, as I just mentioned, individual marketing. You go individual to your target. I hope that this could make clear that how you understand, how you segment and how you target your market can have and will have a massive impact on your market cultivation. Coming to what I think is the ideal process of market segmenting. You start with analyzing the motivators. People are buying brands because of their needs and wants. In other words, because of their motives. And this should then be the starting point of your segmenting. This is what you can call psychographic segmenting. Unfortunately, these motives are not written on the foreheads of us all, so we can't see who has these motives. Therefore, we need to correlate or associate these motives with descriptors. You can also call them identifiers. So we need to know, are we targeting men or women? What age does our target group have? Where do they live? And so forth. That means we're going for demographic and geographic segmenting. In most likely, in nearly every case, we're not operating on our own in a lovely environment where we have no competitors. Unfortunately, we have competitors. So we need to determine who are our competitors. This is what we should do on the basis of our motivators. Finally, we need to determine which market segments should we approach. On the basis of our target group and the competitors, we analyze the behavior of our target group and to what financial ends this behavior leads, and decide on this basis which market segments we should go into or we should invest to. Now, before we come to this process and to the psychographic segmenting, let me introduce you to a few basic terms that are important from psychology. That is activation and involvement, emotions and feelings, motives, attitudes, as well as personality and lifestyle. It's a bit of simplified presentation here, but it is important that you get an overview what you're dealing with. Activation is just an arousal of the central nervous system. It's just when we get highly activated, aroused, or we are very calm. There's no meaning to it. Involvement is then activation that's focused to an object or a goal that we have. When we give this a meaning, that means there's interpretation. Then we come to feelings and emotions. Emotions are something that's positive or negative, joy and pain. And they have different intensities. That is the arousal, the activation I was talking earlier of. Either highly motivated, highly activated, or calmly. Rather calmly, I'm very satisfied throughout the day. And another positive emotion is I'm highly excited about the date I have tonight. Something like this. But they also have different qualities. Some are happy, good, joy, satisfaction. Some are not so good, like hate, sadness, and so on. Normally, emotions come with physical and behavioral consequences or elements that accompany them, like a facial impression. Or, if you're happy, you will laugh or smile. If you're sad, you'll probably cry. So, that is an emotion. When you add the goal orientation to an emotion, you come to motives. Motives are the drivers of our behavior. The motives initiate, direct, and drive our behavior. And it's not so much why are people doing something, it's rather to what end are people doing something. And emotion and motives are very much related. Lots of standard textbooks in psychology, you find a book that's titled Emotional and Motivational Psychology. The reason for this being that as human beings, we all strive after positive emotional states. And we would like to avoid the negative emotional states. Therefore, an emotion with a goal orientation, the goal orientation is, I want to feel good, I want to feel happy. That is then coming to a motive. When the motive is, or when to the motive is added an object orientation, we have an attitude. You might also call it an image. Image being the more business administration oriented term, while attitude is the more psychology, the term that comes from psychology. Attitudes are evaluations. I like something, I dislike something, of objects. And an object can be anything. It can be my beloved partner, it can be a brand, it can be a philosophical idea. And this evaluation, I like it, dislike it, of the object is based on experiences and cognitions. In other words, what I know or what I think I know about the object. And this leads to a relatively stable reaction toward these objects. For instance, if I have a very positive attitude towards object A or brand A, and I like brand A very much, it is highly likely that I will buy brand A. So my reaction, stable reaction, is I buy brand A again and again. If you take all the attitudes together and put them in an integrated, consistent system, then you have the personality or the lifestyle. So it is all the characteristics and behavioral patterns which a person has and which are relatively stable. That is the personality. Now, having the basic terminology out of the way, the process here, what I recommend you do. I said earlier, people are buying stuff and using stuff because of their motives. They want to fulfill their motives and reach a good state. Therefore, this should be the starting point. First of all, we look what product category, in the broadest sense, is our brand in. The example of a beer brand, that is alcoholic beverages, like wine, beer, and so on. Next step is determining the context of using this product category. Alcoholic beverages are normally consumed when you go into the pub with friends, when you're on a party, or you have a dinner at the weekend with friends. Then you have a beer or a wine. Now, which motives have people in these situations when drinking alcoholic beverage? That is the motives for the product category. In our example, having a good time with my friends or loved ones, connecting with them, relaxing. Such motives come when drinking a beer. As I said earlier, we cannot see who has these motives. Therefore, we need to correlate or associate them with descriptors. But we'll come to this in the next step. Before we're coming there, I want to show you two other approaches that might help in this regard. One is lifestyle segmenting. Here is the example of the Sinus Institute. They had a very similar approach than I have, and I'm just showing you here. People are not buying brands because they're 25 years old or they're male or female. Not because of these demographic or socio-demographic characteristics. They're buying stuff because of their lifestyle. So, the fellows from the Sinus Institute clustered the market depending on the people's lifestyles. They put this in a matrix where you find on the y-axis the social stratum, on the lower end, middle, and then going up the higher end of the social ladder. They also on the x-axis put down the basic value orientation. Are these rather traditional? Is there rather traditional orientation? Is there rather a modern orientation? Or is there even a reorientation? For each of these clusters, for each of these segments, you have a description. For instance, the established. They're status-driven. They're the conservative elite. They're very confident. They say they have to take responsibility for society and one has to perform and put some effort in. They also say, we're a bit exclusive. Not everyone belongs to our social group, and we have a certain status. And they accept the social order in a, one might say, a rather hierarchical society. Or another example would be the adoptive navigators. They're adapting to the modern life, to the modern mainstream. They're pragmatists, they're flexible, normally young middle class. They're willing to adapt and perform, one might say, a modern digital lifestyle, but they're also reliable and loyal, and they're open to new products, but they should be tested and there should not go too much of a risk with these products. So that is an approach also to look at how people tick and for what reasons, or rather saying to what end they buy products or brands. Now, to use this, you probably have to go to the Sinus fellows and give them a bit of money to help you with your segmenting, because they're, as far as I know, not very transparent with their method, so it's hard to use their questionnaire, their method with your own market research. One thing you could use with your own market research is the family life cycle. And that is a concept that I've used a few times during my consulting days when I was in business consulting. And the idea behind the family life cycle is that we're all going through phases. And during these phases, we have typical needs and wants, typical motives. And these determine our buying and, of course, in using behavior. So one can say we have the phases of orientation, rush hour of life, second half of life, silver generation. Or with regard to work, first we get our education, then we're working, and then we go into retirement. Now there are specific phases within these framework. So first of all, we're students or have an apprenticeship. Afterwards, we start a job, we are happy, now we have money and we can enjoy our life. Possibly we have to work hard, but we can also party hard. And what happens then? We meet the love of our life, if we haven't met her or him during university. And if we love someone so much, what do? You get married and of course you have children. So a young family with small children, the children grow older, and then at some point the children leave the house and start their own journey as students or apprentices. Now, we work a bit, then we go into retirement, and at some point your beloved partner says goodbye, and it's the end for him or her. Game over. Depending on your marriage, if it was a good one, you are now a retired single and quite sad. If your partner was a beast and was not a good choice you've made, you're happy and you enjoy the remaining years of your life in happiness. But then at some point, it's game over for you. Now, one might say, wait a moment, that was perhaps in the 1960s, 70s, perhaps even 1980s. This was the way, but nowadays, look at the divorce rate. This is not how life is anymore. We're not having all these family stuff. And I might say, wait a moment. Take a step back and have another look. And I can tell you, if you're young, you will make the experience that you have some friends who go in this path. Student life, getting their education, young professionals, meeting the love of their life, having a young family. And at some point, the marriage or the marriage choice was perhaps not the best. And the marriage breaks, and they are the working singles. And they will tell you, oh, love is a fool's game. I will never get entangled with another human being in a romantic way, never in a million years. Wait 3-4 years maximum, and you find them back up on the upper path. And they are again deeply in love, and have their partner, and perhaps even get married a second time. So we're human beings, we're social beings. We all want to have a family, a nest or a tribe, however you want to call it. So then, nowadays, it's not like in the 1960s or 70s, a straight path, but perhaps a few ups and downs. I can tell you, whenever you have to do some segmenting work, remember this family life cycle. It might help you. Of course, it doesn't help in every project, but it might. Now, I would like to give you an example. A bit simplified, and that stems from a consulting project I had with mortgages in the financial sector, seeing what goes on behind the scenes. So it is about financial services. Remember back, I said in every phase, you have certain motives. And when the young family is on the horizon, so the first child is on the horizon, before this young family phase, it is like a law of nature, where people want to have their own castle or their own nest. They want to have their own home. That means before this phase starts, before there is a family with young children, normally people have the drive to finance their own home. So financial need is preparing to finance your own home. If you're studying in the United States or in England, you know it is bloody expensive to go to university. If you're a parent, you want to support your children, then before they leave the house, so before the empty nest phase comes on, you should sort of save up for your children's education. Finally, the retirement and the pensions are not safe or not comfortable in every country. So before you get retired, you should have some savings on that also. Your life in retirement is rather cozy and enjoyable. Now, these was the motivators, the psychology perspective. Please remember, I said, this is where you should start. You should have the motives, the reasons, or the goals of the people why they're buying your product or would buy in your product category. Now, we can't see the motives written on the foreheads of people. Now we need to associate these motives with descriptors, or we can call them identifiers. It is demographic and geographic variables. There's a standard. Gender, age, relationship status, are they married, single, how large is the household, do they have children, and the social stratum. And social stratum is normally defined by the income, the occupation, and the education. But these elements do not always need to match. So I'll give you an example. Think of a football star in the English Premier League. Income is golden. Occupation, being a football star, has a very good reputation. For quite a few, the education is not the best. There are probably some people out who are more highly educated than a football star. But still, that's a high social stratum. Or take me as a professor. I hope I'm quite well educated. Being a professor, I'm very highly regarded by most people, but my income, I should not complain. However, I'm nowhere near a football star in the English Premier League. Furthermore, it's not just demographics, it's also geographics. You should look at the reason. In the international context, where are we going to? To the UK, to the US, to Canada, to Australia, to the Middle East, to China. This is what you should look at. Furthermore, you should look at the countries themselves, or inside the countries, where to go there. Here's an example how you could divide the United States into different areas, like the Northeast, the South, the Midwest, the West. That also makes sense. Again, coming back to the motives and the lifestyle. Someone from New England is different than a Texan, or someone of Swedish descent in Minnesota or Montana is very much different than someone of Latin American descent in Florida, or an investment banker from New York is very different than a surfer guy from California. So this could make sense to have a look within the country, as quite often there are differences between the people living there. Furthermore, don't only look at the region. Also, I strongly advise you to distinguish between city and rural areas. People in cities tend to be more liberal, whilst people in rural areas tend to be more down to earth and more conservative. I'll give you an example for the UK, how very generalized one could segment this market. And it might be, you have London, the south of England, the Midlands, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Someone from London is very much different as a down-to-earth guy from the Midlands. Or a Scotsman is very much different than a Southern Englishman. So that might make sense. Furthermore, England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, you might also distinguish between cities and rural areas. Again, the motives and the lifestyles are different. Just give you the example. You have a down-to-earth English countryman. Would he go to a fancy London city pub, London city bar? I'm not sure. Down-to-earth English countryman would probably prefer the good old English local. While some city boy, investment banking and so on in London, does he go to a good old English local with pub food and good old ale? I'm not quite sure. So again, the motives might make the difference here, and this should be your starting point for segmenting your market. So what we have done now is we have the motives. We know our target group, how to identify them, if you will, how to find them. And as I said earlier, we are not alone in this world, there are competitors. So we need to determine who are our competitors. We take the steps or the results of step 1, the motivators. We have product category, with the context of using, and we have the motives for using this product category in this specific context of using. And then the general rule is every other brand from this product category in the broader sense, that can fulfill the needs and wants or the motives of the target group. That is a competitor. I like to try to make this clear using the example of Coca-Cola. Coke is a non-alcoholic soft drink. One might drink a Coke for refreshment or in some social setting. So the motives are something like refreshment and having fun and joy with others. Now the competitors, of course, are the soft drinks like Pepsi and the likes. But that's not just it. We might have secondary competitors. I don't need to have a soft drink to get refreshed and have fun with my friends. I can also have water or juices. And going a step further, I can also have a beer. So there you have tertiary competitors. And I can say from my point of view, it would be very risky for Coca-Cola to just look at other soft drinks. There are more competitors out there. Finally, let's go to behavioral segmenting and therewith targeting. We have analyzed all our brands and competitors in these markets. We have determined them, and now we need to look and analyze them on the steps of the buying process. The first section of this compact course, of this crash course, I recommended using the steps of the buying process of awareness, image, customers, and loyal customers. Here again, I recommend using these steps. So we need to determine how many members of a target group know about a brand and about the competitors, how many have a good image of a brand and the brands of our competitors, how many are customers, how many are loyal customers. Then we decide on the market segments we will attack. So the targeting, this targeting decision is based on the possible or probable profit that we can make there. From customers and loyal customers, we can determine the units we can sell, so the products we can sell in the respective market segments. Adjust customer times buying frequency equals units we're selling. We're multiplying the units with the price and we have the revenue. But revenue is not enough. We want to make a profit as a company. Revenue minus cost equals profit. And then, simply put, if you have a market segment in which you're very likely to make a profit, go for it. If you have a market segment, it's very likely you won't make a profit, don't go for it. So the idea of behavioral segmenting and then targeting is, first of all, we determine how good we are on the steps of the buying process in comparison to our competitors, and then calculate the financial outcome of this, meaning what profit will we most likely make there. I want to give you an example. No, not an example, I'm sorry. I want to give you another thing you should look at, and that is the roles in the buying decision process. So quite often you do not only look at one person but multiple persons. There might be different people in a buying process that are the initiator, the influencer, the actual decider for the purchase, the buyer and the user. I'll give you a B2C, business to consumer example. They're drawn from a commercial I've seen years ago on the British telly. I think it was about chocolate cereals. So a child watches the telly, sees a commercial where it's about a chocolate bar or chocolate cereals. So the kid thinks, wow, great, I want to have this. Runs to his or her mother, says, "Mommy, mommy, mommy, buy me a chocolate bar." The mother then decides and said, right, I want to have a happy kid, so I buy him or her the chocolate bar. The mother goes to the shop, buys the chocolate bar, gives it to the kid, and the child eats it and hopefully is happy and doesn't get diabetes. And within this, I can't remember the brand for this commercial, they were very clever. They targeted these two parts of these two roles, people within the buying process. The slogan was something like, the brand and then loved by kids, approved by mums. In markets where you have to deal with multiple people involved in the buying process is the B2B sector, more often than not. For example, think of a very costly customer relationship management system, something like Oracle, SAP, or Salesforce. You have to invest in a larger company at least a few dozen million pounds, probably. And then this is not just one person saying, all right, sounds good, why not? Let's do it. No, there's more involved. It might be that the initiator is the head of sales and says, yeah, we need to do a bit more here to be more efficient with working with our clients and getting leads actually to contracts. This will be influenced by lots of people and departments within the company. The sales force itself, they should use it. The IT department, who has to integrate this whole thing. And possibly their external consultants working with it. Such an investment decision is probably decided on C-level. So you have the chief marketing officer, chief executive officer, perhaps the chief financial officer, and so on. In the end, the procurement department will buy this system and then the sales force will use it. When cultivating the market and before that, analyzing the market, you should have this buying center, all the people involved in the decision to buy your product, you should have them in mind. Finally, the last slide for this section. When is your segmenting and targeting good? So the quality criteria. First of all, your market segments need to be measurable. That is a golden rule in life for everything. You cannot change something that you can't measure. You never know what happened if you can't measure it. So it needs to be measurable. Your market segments need to be substantial. This is another word for you need to make a decent profit out of it. If not, it's stupid to go there if you make a loss. Your market segments need to be accessible and actionable. So you can find the greatest market segment, the greatest target group with theoretically the best business opportunity. If you can't access this, yeah, forget about it, you can't go there. For instance, now in current times, if you are having the perspective of a Western company, Russia is very much under sanctions. And to directly invest or engage in business with Russian companies, I don't know if this is the best idea. Or North Korea. Lots of governments in the West do not really like North Korea. And making business there, even though it might be profitable, theoretically profitable for you, probably not a good idea. You might run into some trouble at home. So, at least directly, forget about such markets. Finally, your market segments need to be differentiable. That means you need to be able to distinguish one from another, one segment from another. If two market segments are the same, they have the same target group with the same motives and needs, it is one target group. It is completely inefficient to do twice the same if you have 2 times defined the same target group. So what you want to have, clearly distinguishable market segments. That was it for this section. And the next section will be analyzing and planning business units, a very traditional approach. Until then, I wish you all the best and say bye-bye for now.